Judicial identification.
The video feed flickers to life, graining in the low-light adjustment before sharpening into the high-definition clarity of a sunny late autumn morning. The timestamp in the upper right corner reads 10:23 a.m., Sunday, November 12th. At first, there is no sound other than the rhythmic heavy breathing of the man wearing the camera, a sound that betrays a rising heart rate, a physiological spike of adrenaline that seems entirely out of place for the setting. The setting is The Woodlands, an exclusive, leafy enclave in the northern suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia. It is a neighborhood defined by its silence, by the manicured perfection of its lawns, and by the heavy oak and pine trees that canopy the streets. It is the kind of place where leaves are blown away before they have a chance to settle, where the driveways are long and winding, and where the concept of danger feels theoretical, something that happens on the news, not on the other side of the manicured hedges. On the screen, the camera bobs erratically, syncing with the hurried, aggressive stride of the officer. We see the crunch of expensive gravel under black tactical boots. We see the flash of a holstered sidearm. And then we see the targets. Standing near the entrance of a sprawling brick colonial house are a man and a woman. They look relaxed, unsuspecting. They are dressed in matching charcoal athletic wear, the uniform of a comfortable weekend morning. The man holds a paper bag from a bakery. The woman holds a travel mug. They are not running. They are not hiding. They are standing in the sanctuary of their own driveway, fishing for keys. But the man behind the camera has already decided that they do not belong. In his mind, a narrative has already been written, a verdict reached, and a sentence is about to be executed. What occurs in the next 4 minutes of footage will dismantle a 20-year career in law enforcement. It will send shockwaves through the federal judiciary. It will result in a prison sentence of 18 years for the man behind the camera. But before we understand the weight of that justice, we must understand the weight of the injustice that preceded it. Because the man in the charcoal hoodie, the man currently being stalked up his own driveway, is not just a homeowner. He is federal judge Marcus Thorne, and he has spent the last 2 decades destroying the careers of corrupt officers, just like the one currently rushing toward him. How does a man who embodies the law react when the law turns against him? And what happens when the predator realizes, far too late, that he has cornered a lion? Before we dive into the details of this case, I want to ask you a question. When you see a police interaction, do you assume the officer is right, or do you wait for the evidence? Keep that honest answer in your mind as we peel back the layers of this story. And if you believe that truth is the only weapon we have against power, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, because we don't just tell stories here, we examine the evidence. To truly understand the magnitude of the mistake Officer Kyle Rigg was about to make, we have to understand the man he was targeting. Marcus Thorne was not simply a judge, he was an institution. Born in 1970 in South Atlanta, Thorne's understanding of the world was shaped by the distinct, often opposing forces of his parents' lives. His mother, Eleanor, was a head nurse at Grady Memorial Hospital for 30 years. She was a woman of science and compassion, someone who saw humanity at its rawest breaking points. She taught Marcus that every person has a story, a reason for their pain, and that empathy was not a weakness, but a tool for survival. His father, Samuel, was a bus driver for MARTA, the city's transit system. Samuel was a man of schedules, of rules, of absolute precision. He navigated the chaotic arteries of a segregated and then integrating city with a stoic dignity. He taught Marcus that the system only works if people respect the lines, but he also taught him that the lines were often drawn by people who didn't look like them. Samuel was the one who taught Marcus how to speak to authority, eyes forward, voice steady, hands visible. Dignity, Samuel would say, is the one thing they can't take unless you give it to them. Marcus absorbed these lessons into a singular worldview. The law was a shield, but only if it was wielded with absolute precision. He was a terrifyingly brilliant student, graduating valedictorian from his high school and earning a full scholarship to Emory University. By the time he reached law school at the University of Georgia, he was already a legend among his peers for his preparation. While other students were partying on Friday nights, Thorne was in the library dissecting case law until the janitors turned the lights out. He didn't go into corporate law where the money was. He went into the trenches. He joined the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Northern District of Georgia. His specialty was public corruption and racketeering. For 12 years, Marcus Thorne was the prosecutor who cleaned house. He didn't go after low-level drug dealers trying to survive. He went after the architects of chaos. He prosecuted city council members who took bribes. He prosecuted gang leaders who ordered hits from prison. But his most famous work, the work that earned him the nickname the Iron Gavel, was his prosecution of law enforcement. In a 5-year span, he secured convictions against 15 police officers. These were not minor infractions. He took down a vice squad commander who was skimming seized cash. He put away a sheriff's deputy who was fabricating evidence to meet arrest quotas. He didn't hate the police, he revered the law. And to Marcus Thorne, a badge used as a shield for crime was the ultimate blasphemy. At age 36, he was appointed to the federal bench. It was a lifetime appointment, confirmed unanimously by the Senate. As a judge, he was terrifyingly fair. Prosecutors knew they had to be perfect. Defense attorneys knew they wouldn't get away with theatrics. He was known for a specific demeanor, absolute icy calm. He never raised his voice. He didn't have to. His silence was heavy enough to crush a room. He had built a life of impeccable order. He married Dr. Camille Thorne, an emergency room physician whose steel nerves matched his own. Together, they were a power couple in the truest sense. Two people who dealt with life and death, justice and trauma, every single day. They moved to the Woodlands to give their children, Leo, 13, and Maya, 10, a childhood free from the noise and danger they dealt with professionally. They thought they had purchased safety. They thought that their degrees, their titles, and their address were a form of armor. But on that Sunday morning in November, Officer Kyle Rigg would prove that for a black man in America, no amount of armor is impenetrable. Let's shift our focus to the other side of this collision. Officer Kyle Rigg was 35 years old, and he had been wearing a badge for 14 years. If Marcus Thorne's career was defined by excellence, Rigg's was defined by mediocrity and protected negligence. Rigg was a rover, a patrol officer who bounced between districts, never staying in one command long enough to be fully scrutinized, yet always carrying his baggage with him. His personnel file, which would later be unsealed during federal proceedings, read like a roadmap to a disaster. Over a decade and a half, Rigg had accumulated 9 official complaints for excessive use of force. 9. In any other profession, medicine, aviation, teaching, 9 formal complaints of endangering others would result in immediate termination. But in the ecosystem of the local police department, Rigg was considered active and proactive. He had 3 accusations of racial profiling. He had been cited for turning off his body camera during arrests twice. And yet, only 1 complaint had ever been sustained, a minor reprimand for discourteous language during a traffic stop 5 years prior. The system had wrapped Rigg in a cocoon of invincibility. Internal affairs investigations were handled by officers he drank beer with on weekends. The union representatives made sure that paperwork disappeared or was filed past deadlines. Rigg learned a dangerous lesson. He was untouchable. He believed that his intuition was superior to the Constitution. He believed that if he felt someone was a criminal, he was justified in treating them like one, and the paperwork could be massaged later to fit the narrative. By November of that year, Rigg was growing bored. He had been assigned to patrol the Woodlands, a retirement beat usually reserved for older officers. Nothing happened there. It was quiet. Too quiet for a man who craved the dopamine hit of dominance. He spent his shifts cruising the winding streets, looking for cracked taillights, expired tags, anything to justify an interaction. He was a hammer in search of a nail, and the silence of the suburbs was beginning to feel like an insult. That Sunday morning began with a deceptive peace. The air was crisp, the sky a piercing, cloudless blue. At 10 a.m., Judge Thorne and Dr. Camille Thorne stepped out of their front door. This was their ritual. Sundays were the only days their high-pressure careers allowed them to breathe in sync. The kids, Leo and Maya, were inside playing video games, enjoying the lazy start to the day. Marcus and Camille walked down the long, winding sidewalk toward the neighborhood center, a small commercial village with a high-end bakery and a coffee shop. They were dressed for comfort, Marcus in a heather gray hoodie and sweatpants, Camille in a matching set. They walked hand in hand. They talked about the renovation of their kitchen. They talked about Leo's math grades. They talked about Camille's patient load from the night before. They were just people. They reached the Bean and Leaf, a local cafe, at 10:12 a.m. The barista, a college student named Sarah, knew them by their orders. A black coffee for him, a chai latte for her, and a bag of cinnamon scones for the kids. They paid, left a tip, and began the walk back. The walk home was uphill. They moved at a leisurely pace, enjoying the autumn sun on their faces. They were in their element, in their community, surrounded by neighbors they waved to. But not every neighbor waved back. 3 houses down from the Thorne residence lived Martha Higgins. Martha was 64, a retired accountant who spent the vast majority of her retirement behind her front blinds. She was the administrator of the Neighborhood Watch Group Online, a forum she used to document every unfamiliar car, every solicitor, and every out-of-place individual. Martha Higgins did not see a federal judge and a doctor. She did not see her neighbors of 3 years. Through the distortion of her own bias, filtered through the slats of her blinds, she saw two figures in hooded sweatshirts walking slowly, looking at houses. She saw threat. At 10:18 a.m., Martha picked up her phone. She didn't call the non-emergency line. She dialed 911. The recording of that call is a study in projection. 911, what is your emergency? Yes, I need a patrol car sent to Oakwood Drive immediately. There are two suspicious individuals prowling the neighborhood. Prowling, ma'am. Are they on private property? They are walking up driveways. They're looking in windows. They're wearing hoodies. Hoods up. They don't live here. I've never seen them. Can you describe them? It's a man and a woman, African American. They look like they're casing the place. They're carrying a bag, maybe for tools or to stash stolen items. Martha Higgins lied. Or perhaps in her warped perception, she believed she was telling the truth. They weren't looking in windows. They were admiring landscaping. They weren't walking up driveways. They were walking on the sidewalk. But the words casing and tools triggered a specific code in the dispatch system. The call went out at 10:20 a.m. Suspicious persons, possible burglary in progress. Oakwood Drive. Two suspects, male and female. Dark clothing, carrying bags. Officer Kyle Rigg was 3 streets away. When the radio crackled with the potential for action, his boredom evaporated. This was it. A burglary in progress. Real police work. He grabbed the radio mic. Unit 4 Alpha, I'm close. Show me en route. He didn't turn on his lights or sirens. He wanted the element of surprise. He accelerated, his engine roaring as he navigated the curves of the subdivision. He wasn't thinking about investigation. He was thinking about interception. He was already visualizing the arrest. This brings us to a critical moment in our understanding of policing. When an officer responds to a call based on a lie, they enter the scene with a poisoned worldview, but a professional officer assesses the scene against the report. A biased officer forces the scene to match the report. What do you think goes through an officer's mind in those seconds? Is it protection? Or is it predation? Pause for a second and think about how many tragedies could be avoided if the first step was a question instead of a command. At 10:23 a.m., the Thorns arrived at their driveway. They were laughing about something, a joke about the scones getting cold. They clicked the garage door opener clipped to Marcus's waistband. The heavy mahogany door of their 3-car garage began to rumble upward. At that exact moment, Officer Rigg's cruiser screeched around the corner. He saw them. He saw the hoodies. He saw the bag. He didn't see the garage door opening, a clear sign of residency. He only saw the targets. He swerved his cruiser across the bottom of the driveway, blocking their path to the street, tires chirping on the asphalt. The aggressive positioning was a tactic. Cut off the escape route. Establish dominance immediately. The body camera footage, the footage that would become the central evidence in a federal indictment, starts here. Rigg slams his door open and exits the vehicle before it fully settles on its suspension. He does not adjust his hat. He does not check the environment. His hand drops immediately to the retention hood of his holster. He is not drawing the weapon yet, but the threat is implicit. He is vibrating with aggression. "Hey, you two, stay right there," Rigg bellows. His voice is guttural, stripping away any pretense of a consensual encounter. Marcus and Camille turn. They are startled. The peaceful morning has been shattered in a heartbeat. Marcus instinctively steps slightly in front of his wife. It is a protective gesture, ancient and automatic. "Excuse me," Marcus says. His voice is calm. It is the voice he uses when a defense attorney makes a frivolous objection. It is deep, resonant, and controlled. "I said stay right there. Hands out of your pockets." Rigg is marching up the driveway, closing the distance rapidly. He is invading their personal space, violating the reactionary gap that officers are trained to maintain. "Officer," Marcus says, holding the bakery bag in one hand and raising the other open palm. "We live here. We are literally opening our garage." "I don't care what you're opening. Drop the bag." "Now," Camille speaks up, her voice trembling with a mixture of confusion and the rising panic of someone who knows how fragile the human body is. "It's pastries. It's breakfast. We just walked back from the cafe." "Ma'am, back up. I'm not going to ask you again." Rigg is now 5 feet away. The camera captures the sweat on his upper lip, the dilated pupils. He is not listening. He is waiting for a reason. Marcus Thorne analyzes the situation in a split second. He sees the officer's name tag, RIGG. He sees the lack of a sergeant's stripes. He sees the hand on the holster. He knows the law better than the man standing in front of him. He knows that under the Fourth Amendment, he is being seized. He knows that without reasonable suspicion of a crime, this is unlawful, but he also knows that being right doesn't stop a bullet. Officer Rigg, Marcus says, intentionally using the name to signal he is paying attention. You are on private property. We are the homeowners. I have identification in my back pocket. I am going to reach for it slowly. Don't you reach for anything! Rigg screams. The logic of Marcus's statement bounces off him. The mention of ID should be the de-escalation ramp. Instead, Rigg takes it as a challenge to his control. Rigg lunges. It happens so fast. Rigg closes the final gap and grabs Marcus's left arm, the arm holding the bag of scones. He twists it violently behind Marcus's back. The bakery bag falls, bursting open. Scones scatter across the pristine driveway, crumbling into the gravel. "Hey, what are you doing?" Camille screams, stepping forward. "Back up or you're next," Rigg yells over his shoulder, using his free hand to shove the doctor backward. "You have no probable cause," Marcus asserts, grimacing as his shoulder joint is leveraged to its limit. "I am not resisting. I'm stating that this is an unlawful detention." "Shut up! You're under arrest for failure to comply." Rigg slams Marcus forward. The hood of the Thorn silver sedan is right there. Rigg drives the federal judge face first onto the metal. Thud! The sound is sickening. The air leaves Marcus's lungs in a sharp wheeze. His cheek is pressed against the hot metal of the car hood. Inside the house, the noise has penetrated the walls. Leo and Maya run to the living room window. They look out. They see their father, their hero, the man they believe is the strongest person in the world, pinned to a car like an animal. They see a stranger with a gun twisting his arm. They see their mother crying, hands raised in surrender. Imagine that image burned into the mind of a 13-year-old boy. The trauma of seeing the protector rendered helpless. That is a scar that no court settlement can fully erase. Outside, the struggle, if you can call it that, for Marcus is not fighting back physically, continues. Rigg is fishing for his handcuffs. "Stop moving! Stop fighting!" Rigg is shouting commands for the camera, creating a false audio narrative of resistance that the video clearly contradicts. Marcus is perfectly still, despite the pain. "My husband is a federal judge," Camille screams. The words tear out of her throat, desperate and shrill. "Check his pocket. He is a federal district court judge." The words hang in the air for a second. Rigg pauses. His hand is on his cuffs. The adrenaline fog lifts just an inch. "What did you say?" Rigg pants. "He is a judge." Camille is sobbing now, pointing at Marcus's back pocket. "His credentials are in his wallet. Check them, please. Just check them." Marcus, face still pressed to the hood, speaks. His voice is strained, muffled, but terrifyingly clear. "Officer Rigg, in my right rear pocket is a leather wallet. Inside is my federal judicial identification. If you continue this assault, you will be committing a felony under 18 U.S. Code Section 111, assaulting a federal officer." The specificity of the statute cuts through the noise. Rigg hesitates. The suspect isn't begging. He is citing federal code. Slowly, warily, Rigg releases the pressure on Marcus's arm but keeps a hand on his back. He reaches into the back pocket. He pulls out a slim black leather wallet. He flips it open. The sun catches the gold shield embedded in the leather. The text is unmistakable. United States District Court, Judge Marcus Thorn. The body camera captures the exact moment Officer Rigg's career ends. We see his hand tremble. The wallet dips slightly. We hear a sharp intake of breath. The color seems to drain from the image as the realization hits him with the force of a physical blow. He hasn't just tackled a homeowner. He hasn't just tackled a lawyer. He has assaulted one of the highest-ranking judicial officials in the state of Georgia. Rigg steps back. He drops his hands as if the judge's gray hoodie has suddenly become red hot. Marcus Thorn slowly pushes himself off the car. He does not turn around immediately. He takes a breath. He adjusts his glasses, which are crooked on his face. He brushes the gravel dust from his sleeve. Then he turns. The look on Marcus Thorn's face is not rage. It is something far worse. It is the absolute cold calculation of a prosecutor who has just been handed a smoking gun. He stares directly into the lens of the body camera. "Officer Rigg," Thorn says, his voice eerily level. "You are still recording?" Yes, sir," Rigg stammers. The bully is gone. The predator has vanished. In his place is a terrified man who knows he is drowning. "Good," Thorn says. "Do not turn it off. Do not mute it. If that light goes out, I will add destruction of evidence to the list of charges you are currently facing." Thorn reaches out, not to strike the officer, but to take his wallet back. Rigg hands it over like a scolded child. "Call your supervisor," Thorn commands. "Now." "Sir, I can explain." The call said, "I don't want your explanation. I want your sergeant, and I want the watch commander, and I want them here in 5 minutes." While Rigg fumbles for his radio, his hands shaking so badly he drops the mic once, Camille rushes to her husband. She is checking his face, his wrist. She is the doctor now, assessing the damage. But she is also the wife, and the tears are flowing freely. "The kids," she whispers. "Marcus, the kids saw." Marcus looks up at the window. He sees Leo and Maya. He raises his hand and gives them a small, reassuring wave, but he sees the fear in their eyes. And that is when the cold resolve in his heart turns into iron. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a violation of his family's sanctuary. The next hour on Oakwood Drive was a parade of blue lights. The sergeant arrived first, looking pale. He knew who Judge Thorne was. He had testified in Thorne's courtroom. When he saw the judge standing in his driveway, dusting flour from his sweatpants, while Officer Rigg stood by the cruiser looking like a ghost, the sergeant knew the department was in a catastrophe. Then the lieutenant arrived, then the chief of police for the precinct. They tried to apologize. They tried to smooth it over. The chief approached Thorne hat in hand. "Judge Thorne, this is a terrible misunderstanding. Officer Rigg was acting on a credible tip. He was on edge. We can handle this internally." Thorne looked at the chief. "Internally? Chief, this man assaulted me on my property without probable cause. He used excessive force on a compliant subject. You will not handle this internally. You will arrest him." "Arrest him? Judge, surely we can—" "If I were a 19-year-old kid from South Atlanta, would you be debating whether to arrest the man who assaulted me, or would I be in the back of that car right now?" The silence that followed was heavy. "I am filing a formal complaint with the Department of Justice." Thorne continued. "I am requesting a special prosecutor, and I expect Officer Rigg to be booked into the county jail before lunch. Am I clear?" "Yes, Your Honor." At 11:45 a.m., Officer Kyle Rigg was placed in handcuffs, not by Judge Thorne, but by his own sergeant. He was read his Miranda rights in the same driveway where he had violated the rights of a family just an hour before. This brings us to a difficult question. Justice was swift for Judge Thorne, but what if he had been a plumber? What if he had been a teacher? What if he had just been Marcus from the block? Would the chief have come? Would the cuffs have gone on Rigg? We know the answer, and that answer is why this story matters. The legal battle that followed was not the quiet internal affair the police department hoped for. It was a spectacle. The Department of Justice Civil Rights Division took the case immediately. They didn't just look at the incident on the driveway. They opened the vault on Kyle Rigg's entire career. They found the 9 complaints. They found the patterns of racial bias. They found the emails between Rigg and other officers joking about hunting in certain neighborhoods. Thorne recused himself, obviously, but he didn't need to be the judge. He was the star witness. The trial took place a year later. Rigg's defense attorney tried to argue qualified immunity. He tried to argue that the 911 call from Martha Higgins gave Rigg the justification to detain the couple, but the prosecution played the tape. They played the audio of Rigg screaming within seconds of arrival. They played the video of him ignoring the explanation about the garage door. They played the crunch of the judge hitting the car hood. And then Judge Thorne took the stand. He didn't speak with anger. He spoke with the precision of a surgeon. He dismantled every police procedure Rigg had violated. He explained the Fourth Amendment to the jury not as an abstract concept, but as the only thing standing between a free citizen and tyranny. When he twisted my arm, Thorne told the jury, he wasn't just hurting me. He was telling my children that their father has no rights that the state is bound to respect. He was breaking the covenant between the people and the police. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Deprivation of rights under color of law. Assault, false imprisonment. Because of Rigg's history and because the victim was a federal official, the sentencing guidelines were severe. The judge presiding over the case, a colleague of Thorne's from a different district, did not show leniency. Officer Rigg, the sentencing judge said, you took an oath to protect the Constitution. Instead, you treated it as an inconvenience. You are a danger to the community you swore to serve. Kyle Rigg was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. The aftermath of the case rippled outward. The police department was placed under a consent decree, forced to overhaul its hiring and disciplinary practices. Martha Higgins, the neighbor who made the call, faced charges for filing a false police report and was sued civilly by the Thornes for defamation and emotional distress. She settled for an undisclosed amount and moved out of the neighborhood within 3 months. But for the Thorne family, the victory was bittersweet. Marcus Thorne went back to the bench. He continued to be a fair, strict judge, but his colleagues noticed a change. When police officers testified in his courtroom, Thorne watched them with a new intensity. When defendants claimed they were roughed up during arrest, Thorne paused the proceedings to look deeper. He understood now, in a way that no law book could teach, what it felt like to be on the other side of the badge. Leo and Maya went to therapy. They worked through the image of their father on the car hood. They learned that their father was strong, not because he fought back with fists, but because he fought back with the truth. This story ends with a victory for justice, but it serves as a warning. The system worked for Marcus Thorne because he was powerful. He had the ID, he knew the code, he had the chief on speed dial. But true justice shouldn't require a law degree and a federal judgeship. True justice should be the default setting, not a VIP package. Officer Rigg sits in a federal penitentiary today, perhaps finally understanding the weight of the laws he used to enforce. Judge Thorne sits on his bench, ensuring that the power of the state is never again used as a weapon against the innocent. And the camera that Rigg thought would validate his authority, became the instrument of his downfall. It reminds us that in the modern world, the truth has a digital footprint. What would you have done if you were in that driveway? Would you have kept your cool, like the judge? Or would instinct have taken over? And more importantly, what are we doing to ensure that the next person down that driveway doesn't need a federal badge to survive a Sunday morning walk? If this story moved you, if it made you think about the thin line between order and chaos, share it. Talk about it, because silence protects the guilty, but the truth sets us free. I'm curious to hear your verdict. Did 18 years fit the crime? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that shape our understanding of justice. Until next time, stay safe and stay watching.